Hinging from the hips, I want you to bow down to divinity. Inhale upwards. And welcome. So today's class is going to be a little bit different. And I will pick on some of you today because I want to see how you put something together. So today's class is going to be very much about sequencing, because Kundalini has a lot of different facets and a lot of different elements. And you might be thinking, well, I'm learning lots, like I'm learning a Kriya practice, I'm learning an asana practice, I'm learning a pranayama practice, I'm learning a mantra. And how on earth do I pull that together for a class? So I think it's quite important just to go through some hints and tips, take questions, and get you guys to maybe pull a little bit together. So we'll focus on the Svadhisthana chakra because that will be fresh in your mind from the class this morning, and it will just make it a little bit easier. So tell me, somebody, tell me about the Svadhisthana chakra. Where is it? Yeah, it's your sacral chakra that sits in between you. Absolutely. The colour?
Orange.
Yes. Do you know how I remember it? There's a mnemonic for the chakra colours. So if you forget, do you know the colour of the rainbow? Roy of York gave battle in vain. So if you remember Roy of York gave battle in vain, then you move from up that way. So it's a really easy way to remember. The mantra chant for the... Okay, let's feel Vam. Let's see what that feels like. Vam, 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 Vam. Inhale deeply. Just relax into that movement. Doesn't matter if your body moves, because the sacral chakra is all about fluidity. It's all about movement. Open your eyes gently. And now we can talk about sequencing. So would you believe that was a really quick sequence for that specific sacral chakra, and how you can actually start a class? And you guys literally gave me the answer. So you have it in you, you have that knowledge. As soon as you learn, you have that knowledge. And it's about pulling it together in a sequence so that you bring elements of that specific chakra into the classroom. If we are looking at it from the perspective of chakra and Kundalini, it's really difficult to try pull every single chakra into a 1 hour class. So the best thing for you to probably do is focus on one chakra at a time. So if you know you're taking a regular class somewhere, focus on one chakra. 1 week you could do the Muladhara. Week 2 you could do Svadhisthana. Week 3 you could do Manipura. Week 4 Anahata. Week 5 Vishuddhi. Week 6 Agya. And then Sahasrara. And then you could do like a workshop at the end of it to bring it all together, which lasts a little bit longer. And you'll be surprised at how many people want to join this specific type of class, because it invokes a lot of emotion and it invokes a lot of energy. So Gina, I know obviously you do a little bit of teaching. From a sequence perspective, have you taught any form of like energy transmission, energy movement?
Not intentionally.
It comes.
Yeah.
So from what you guys have learnt up to now, talk to me about what you think is the most difficult thing that you're finding, in terms of if you're thinking of it from a teaching perspective.
Okay, so I have a question. So I'm used to like everything flowing, and it seems like Kundalini, it doesn't have like a real flow. Like you can be sitting and then you'll stand, and like I'm used to from the mat working up to stand and then working back down to the mat. So how would you?
Okay.
Just whatever's feeling right, like.
So you always have to plan. So when we looked at the teaching methodology the other day, we always have to plan a class. You have to know what you're going to do, because you can't go with what your energy is saying, because that might be very different to what the energy is in the classroom. So what you've got to look at with Kundalini is, as I explained earlier, there's lots and lots of different facets of Kundalini. So what are you going to pick? So the Hatha practices, for example. Why have we got Hatha practices if it's Kundalini? You might be thinking, why do we have traditional Hatha if we are doing Kundalini and it's all about the Kriya? The Hatha is actually the base of all the poses. You have to know them asanas, you have to know those postures, because those postures are what take you into the Kriya practice. So this morning, for example, when Swamiji was teaching you the boat pose, and that's almost like a forward fold. So what effectively you're doing in a Kundalini class is you are bringing the pranayama into the asana. Does that make sense? So if I went into a specific asana, for example, so if I go into Cobra pose now, I will bring a pranayamic breath that I know will work with that specific asana. It can be quite difficult, so I'm going to go into one now. So if I was starting the class, I would do my welcome to start, as we do, and I'd do my grounding, because it's always worth grounding and centering. And I'd also tell the class what chakra you're working on, what sort of feelings it would invoke, what they may feel afterwards. Because obviously with certain chakras and opening those chakras, if they are unbalanced, people may start crying in the class, people might get a bit emotional in the class, or they might feel a bit anxious. So you've just got to be aware that when you're doing the energy clearing, that this potentially could happen with the breath work and being in a specific asana. So if we all come to your mat, and you come to Makarasana to start with, just lie like this, and then we're going to come into a Cobra pose, and I'm going to show you what the Hatha asana looks like when you invoke a pranayamic breath. So if I come up into Cobra pose, be comfortable in it. Go as only far as you need to. Don't push yourself. Inhale deeply. And then I'm going to pump the belly in a Kapalbhati breath. And then you inhale and hold. I'd say usually for about 5 breaths, no more than 5 breaths, because it can become quite difficult. And then you go down. So if you want to try to see what it feels like.
Now would you have them find the pose and just stretch their body in it and get comfortable first and then bring the breath work in, or you just go like
No, so what will happen is you go straight into your breathing. You get them to come into the pose. So if you want your class to flow, it'll be really difficult to sit and almost talk through every single pose and get people comfortable. 30 minutes will literally just go in getting people comfortable. So if you lift, and then you can pump, and then see how it feels. So it can be quite hard. So what I would suggest is that you don't actually go into a classroom and think that you're going to do every single pose. with the students, it's not going to work. You can talk about the pose, you can demonstrate the pose, and you can demonstrate the breath. But you can demonstrate the breath as you're walking around. And that's how your class will flow. So what you've also got to think about is what asanas relate to that specific chakra. So what asanas were you taught this morning?
Child's pose, forward fold,
Cat-cow. Yeah. So there's a lot of poses within the Hatha sequence that can relate to the Svadhisthana chakra. It's not just related to those. Svadhisthana is one of our lower chakras. So we kind of almost need to feel it on the ground, but not with every single one, because you can get quite a lot of it with hip movement as well. Now, the way that a class or a sequence would work is that you would do some warm-up exercises. Your warm-up exercises actually come from your Bhavan Muktasana series. You just need to pick 2 or 3. So if you're doing lower body, you could do a lot of hip opening warm-ups and back opening warm-ups. If you're doing the upper chakras, you could do a lot of shoulder opening and shoulder warm-ups. If you're doing any other kind of poses, quite central, you could do some laying down where you move both sides of your body. And then you pick 4 or 5 asanas. That's all you need to do that relate to the Svadhisthana chakra. And you work through those asanas with breath work. Each of those asanas you will bring breath into, even when you're doing your warm-up exercise. So say I'm doing my warm-up exercise and I'm sat here and I'm thinking, okay, I want it to be here. I want it to be my Svadhisthana chakra. I would pick 3 or 4 from, maybe 1 from each series sometimes, because an energy clearing one's quite good as well, just to get that, stagnant energy release. So you've got Bhavan Muktasana 1, which is all this kind of movement. So with this kind of movement, you can bring in that Bhastrika breath. And it starts to build your class. So know your pranayama. Use which pranayama is going to work with what pose. So if I lay down and I have my legs open and I'm swaying my body side to side because I'm opening up this part and the lower part of my body, you can use a different breath. You can use a breath retention even. So you can go down, hold, move back up, go down, hold, move back up, go down, hold, move back up.
And in which part of the class, for example, in our pranayama lesson, we learn also like breathing in to the left and breathing out to the right, and with holding our hands on the nose. Which part we integrate this?
So you can do it at the beginning.
Before the warm-up.
So before the warm-up. So what you're literally doing with the pranayama breath, so if you're doing like a Nadi Shodhanam or an Anuloma Viloma breath, I'd do my welcome first, my centering and my grounding, and then I would go into a pranayama breath clearance to set the room. Then go into the warm-up, then you go into the asana practice, then you can go back into a pranayama breath work and then into shavasana. But you have to be really mindful as well of your time and how long you can stay in, because 1 hour goes so quickly. So if you're talking about something, that 1 hour, it'll just fly like that and you won't even realise, and then you'll be looking at the clock trying to rush it through. So when you sequence, you have to practice. You have to practice what that sequence looks like. How long does it take? How does it work? Do you want to add mantra music in? Because again, there's specific mantras for specific chakras. And you can just build a playlist on Spotify, for example, for that particular class, and have it playing through in the background really gently to the flow of the asana. And when you want to increase the energy, you increase the volume. When you want them to start chanting, if they're in a specific position, just as I did with you guys and said, go into vam, 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 I could have quite easily taken you into an asana class then and done a sort of practice with you without even really thinking about anything. And that's the beauty. That's where you have to learn your traditional poses. You don't have to know every single pose, because what you will find in a teaching class in sequencing is that you always work towards one major pose. So that major pose doesn't have to be somebody being upside down or in a headstand or in a handstand, because what you'll find is 90% of the class probably are not able to do those asanas. What poses do you pick then? What poses would you say that you could use as a pose or an asana that you're going to work towards? If we focus on the Svadhisthana chakra, as you've done this morning. Boat pose, absolutely. Shoulder stand, bridge pose.
Cobra and child pose.
Yeah, you can go into cobra pose. That can be classed as a key. So then you can build your other asanas around moving into the cobra pose as the final asana.
It has to be sitting only. It can be.
No, you can do anything.
And a standing one also.
Of course you can. Yeah. Svadhisthana doesn't just relate to something that's seated, albeit that we work it and teach it in that particular way, because that's the traditional way of being taught, and that's to get you guys to feel, so that you guys can feel what that Svadhisthana chakra feels like. What does it feel like? What do you see when you close your eyes and you're in those specific asanas?
So we can club it like a two of standing and then sitting and lying down.
Yeah, because Svadhisthana is here. So when you go into a standing pose or an inversion, like downward dog, if you pull your pubic bone inwards and feel and close your eyes, you'll still feel your sacral chakra. But these are just to get energy flowing. So your Kriya practices really are to get your energy flowing. So effectively, the asanas that you did this morning quite easily can go into a flow or a practice, because you can just use them 6 or 7 that's being given and build a class around those asanas. So you could start with your welcome, your centering and your grounding, your pranayama, 4 of them poses even, back to a pranayama, and then a shavasana. And a shavasana doesn't just have to be 2 minutes. How many times do we go to an asana class and it's like the class is nearly finished and all of a sudden it's like, you've got 1 minute for shavasana, relax. Who's going to relax in 1 minute? It doesn't happen. So always make sure you leave time at the end of the class to really get people to settle down and feel, because that's the whole point of Kundalini. The whole point of Kundalini is that inner awareness. It's not about rushing. It's not about stressing. It's not about getting every single pose or every single asana in that you've been taught. Because sometimes our ego gets in the way and we think, I want to showcase everything that I've learned. I want to teach you everything. I want to show you everything. It won't work like that. So, how does it all string together and how does it all fit together? The reason we teach you in blocks and we can't teach you how to sequence is because everybody's style is different. How I teach will be very different to how Laura teaches. How Laura teaches will be very different to how Rishab would teach. Even if it's not for teaching and it's for your own inner practice, you have to learn to feel. So my tip for you would be, every time you are doing these Kriya practices, even when you're in the traditional Hatha class, feel the asana. Don't come to class with the ego to think, I need to get into that pose. Because that's when you'll start to build tension in your body and you won't have that feeling and that awareness. So every pose you do, every asana you do, every practice you do, you have to do it with that awareness. You have to do it with that feeling. What does it feel like for you? Because what it feels like for you, once you know what it feels like, you can then take that feeling and that's how you can push it into your classroom. That's how you push it into your practice. So I'm going to pick on somebody now, just because I can. So, who shall I pick on? Everybody's smiling at me. Look, everybody's so scared. Like, please don't look at me. There you give me eye contact. I see you. Rishab, I'll grab you. You're at the back of the class. You did Svadhisthana, so you've got a bit of understanding on that specific chakra. Run me through a 2-minute sequence.
So, alright guys, sit in Dandasana. So we gonna do Janusasana. So hold one leg.
We just try it.
Yeah, just practice with him.
Make sure that your leg is the leg that you are holding is 90 degrees. Now twist your belly in the front. Twist your navel in the front. You can hold your leg from your left hand and go like raise your hands and go down. Hold and hold for three breaths. Rama, raise your hands. Slowly change your leg. Raise your hands. Go down. Hold for 3 breaths. Raise your arms. Shake your legs. And relax.
Okay, so what I would have done in that specific asana, because it's Kundalini related, so you've gone into a very traditional hatha type breath in that specific asana. So what I would do is in Dandasana, just make sure everybody's grounded. If they're not sitting straight, get them to sit on something, just to lift the spine so that they can feel the energy and the straightness. So Rishab, exactly the same as you did. Bend your knee, bring your foot to your thigh. Really what you want to do is feel your heel into your perineum. Push it in so it straightens you up almost. So can you feel a little bit more grounded in that way? For Kundalini and its awareness, what do you do? Raise your arms and we speed it up. Breathe. Once more. Up and down, hold. And then exhale upwards. How did that feel differently to doing in a traditional hatha pose?
More energized and very simple, easy to do it.
Really simple, really easy to do it, and that's the magic of Kundalini sequencing. The magic of Kundalini sequences is bringing a breath into a specific asana. So when I've gone into that hold, I can quite easily then talk about what should you be feeling. Feel the movement of water, feel that fluidity.
So like your cues, so again, so I'm like alignment, all that stuff. So your cues, instead of like cueing your foot's active and like parts of your body to be in the pose, right? You're cueing what you should see. Like, what's going
Yeah,
on
so
inside.
absolutely. So Amber, you can do a cue, do 2 or 3 cues. You don't need to do more than 2 or 3 cues, because if you cue too much, the cueing never stops, because there's lots of different cues for specific body parts. So what I tend to do, because Kundalini is about having this spine straight, neck and spine need to be aligned so we can feel that movement of energy, we can feel that Shakti moving upwards, and feel that energy and prana rotating in the body. The only way we can do that is if we cue to what that feels like. So when I said lift, make sure your spine's straight, sit on something if you need to. Yeah, you can then just say, make sure that the opposite leg stays active in flexion, for example, or extension. Just the main 1 or 2 points, because then you are going to talk about the pranayama and the breath and what sort of breath they're doing. Why are you going to do that breath? You can bring all of that into it. We don't have to talk loads, because if we keep talking, how does the student then feel? Because they're either listening, they've either stopped breathing and they're going to pass out because they really don't know what they're doing in that specific class, or they're in the asana and they're in the feeling. So you have to dictate or guide or command or demand which of those you want that student to feel. Okay, does somebody else now want to have a go? Poonam?
No, please, I'm thinking.
Okay, you're thinking. Let's see. Gemma? Just think of a pose, think of an asana.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to do cobra pose. So if you could get into position. So if you start off and just lay down, completely down, relax and moving. And then bring both hands spread out, just side to side with your elbows in towards your body. And then you're going to come up, breathing in. Big inhale. And then what we're going to do from here is we're going to go into child's pose. So we're going to come back, all the way back, into child's pose, breathing in. So that's the sequence we're going to do, but we're going to do it with inhale, exhale, and faster breath. So I'll just demonstrate and then you can do the same. So a really powerful inhale as you come up to cobra, and then a really powerful exhale as you come down to child's pose. Keep going for full rest. And you've done 10 breaths, just a hug and relax into child's pose. Exhale and relax and head down. And then come back into the
Well done. So what could you bring into that asana to make them feel? What could you bring into that asana to bring some awareness in of Kundalini? She did. It wasn't really the breath of fire because it wasn't fast enough for breath of fire, so you weren't pumping quick enough. So that was a bit more like a Bastrika type breath where it's inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Anybody else?
Maybe always you have to finish with and relax and feel. No?
Yeah.
Something like this.
Relax and feel. But what are you feeling? What was the purpose of that pose? What chakra were we clearing? Yeah. Up and down. So you're moving the pelvis. So when you come into that pose, what you have to remember is that your students are probably not seasoned yogis, and they're going to be trying to breathe, do an asana, watch everybody else in the room at the same time. Their ego will be kicking in. They've got no awareness of what the heck is going on in that moment of time. What you want to do is somebody who has an underlying medical condition where they can't do a Bastrika breath, or they can't do the Kapalbhati breathing, or they can't do the Shitali breathing, or the lion's breath. So what you're thinking about when you're sequencing a Kundalini class is just that movement and that feeling of that prana and that energy and where it comes in and where it moves. Your ending. I like to close it with a pranayama of some shape or form because it is all about energy. So you want to really gather that energy in and you want to bring it back to the union of Shiva and Shakti because that's the whole intention of Kundalini. So you pick the song, you pick your final song, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be mantra music. If you're in an area or in a part of the world where they don't get what mantra music is, or they don't understand it, or they don't particularly like it because they...
Yeah, and that's like in Dubai, that's Islamic culture is there, so we can't use mantra.
So it's going to be really hard for you to invoke that kind of mantra because for us, we have that real depth and vibrational energy that we feel. So brilliant example here where, in a specific country, it's not allowed to be played. What can you do in that instance?
Any music, like just now what you played, that.
Absolutely.
Which brings the energy up.
Yeah. Think of that beat. Think of that chakra. Think of that beat. What is that beat of that chakra for you? What is that vibration of that chakra for you? And you can build your music list around that vibration and that chakra, and it doesn't have to be mantra music. Not only that, you know, it's not only country related, it could be person or people related. Some people, even in England, for example, they won't go to a class where we start a class or end a class with Om. So I find teachers come in from a yoga teacher training course and they will bring the grounding and the centering to the class with a start with an Om and we end with an Om. And then all of a sudden it's gone. That Om's not there no more about 2 weeks later, and I'm sat there thinking, where's my Om gone? That Om's gone because somebody's complained or they've thought it's got a religious connotation. So it's really, really difficult to sometimes bring in what we're learning into that environment that we go into. So again, be mindful, understand your environment, understand where you live and what people will invoke or feel. I mean, I'm a little bit cheeky. I'd chuck a mantra in just so that they can understand and feel, because, you know, Kundalini, it comes from this part of the world. If they can't understand the music or they can't hear that type of music, are they actually in the right class?
It like, you know, depends on like the like, you know, if you're teaching this for like a multinational like people are Muslim or for multinationality, then it's okay. But from the local, especially if the local gathering is there, you can't chant Om, you can't. You have to be very, very
Mindful.
aware of. And then over there also they come and check also.
Yeah.
And like, you know, without any notice. So.
And you know, if it is something like that, you know, don't just think that there's mantra music in Hinduism. There's mantra music in Sikhism that you can use. There's mantra music in the Islamic world. That if you're in Mexico, for example, there'll be some sort of Spanish beat or Spanish salsa beat, you know, Colombian salsa beat going on, you know, where we can sort of build it into the chakra and build it into the music. And that chakra or chant might actually be with that music. So, you know, sometimes you could just drop a little bit in that doesn't focus the mind too much on the specific wording, but it's more about the music and the song and that flow of energy. Next, on sequencing. I'm here to help you guys with sequencing. Ask me questions. Once I leave this classroom, I'm closing off to it.
Okay, so question. So obviously you said Shavasana and then end with breath work. So you work towards your main peak breathwork pose. Then you just go to Shavasana, or do you wind them down a little bit? How do you do that?
So there's two ways you can do it. You can bring them into Shavasana, so they release and let go of everything, and then you clear them with the pranayama, or you push that energy so high that you end with a pranayama, and you don't have to go into Shavasana. Go into the feeling. So that could be a seated pose of that feeling. Kundalini doesn't necessarily say that you have to go into Shavasana at the end, dependent on your sequencing. So if you're going to end a class with a pranayama, leave it at the pranayama. If you're going to end a class with Shavasana, don't bother putting a pranayama in, because it can be quite difficult, because you're literally shooting that energy up and then you're shutting them down.
So just do your peak pose, go right to Shavasana and just let them feel.
Yeah.
Or go into like meditation and breathe and then feel.
And then feel, yeah. Because trying to do two things, it can unbalance somebody. Because you're almost with the pranayama, you're going into quite an intense breath, and then a feeling, and then death pose. Yeah, Rishab?
So we can start our class with the pranayama, we can do Bhastrika and Kapalabhati in the starting to make them make their body warmed up. And after that we can choose the cooling pranayama like Shiti and Shikari and Nadi Sudhan. It's like bringing their energies a bit down, and then we can have some meditation and we can start Shavasana.
Absolutely. You can start your class with Shavasana. If you like Shavasana and you're in that specific pose, for your lower chakras especially, works really, really well, because your bum and your spine are on the floor. You know, so you can get them to ground and center, not necessarily sitting in Om like this, but you could be laid in Shavasana and you could Om in Shavasana. Because again, everything we do, like Namaskar, again, you can bring in if they're in Shavasana and you can go into Namaskar there. And you can get them to set a Sankalpa. Get them to set an intention. Because you've already told them what chakra you're working on or what affirmations work. So I am. I am. I am. I am what? You know, you'd have to maybe give them examples. Some people can't necessarily think. I am love. I am light. I am enough. I feel. And that can be done right at the beginning. And then you can close it with the pranayama at the end and the feeling at the end.
Can you have like 2 or 3 different breath works throughout, or do you have to stick with one? Okay.
You can have 2 or 3 different breath works. And it's actually nice to have 2 or 3 different breath works. I really like, for me, I like the Kapalbhati, the Bhastrika and the lion's breath. I think those 3 in a Kundalini class work exceptionally well. But sometimes I like Kapalbhati all the way through as well. Depends on, you know, the heat, the weather, what it's like outside. Kapalbhati is, you know, it is a breath of fire, that skull shining breath. You know, it can be a lot of heat building up with people. So you can shut it off then. So you could have Kapalbhati all the way through and then close it with lion's breath. That lion's breath that we did with Mandeep the other day, you know, where you sat in that specific, that pose.
Is it for the end?
You can do it in the beginning or you can do it at the end. There's no set ruling that it has to be a breath here or a breath here or a breath here. Kundalini is about raising that energy. And, you know, we look all nice and shiny on the outside. We all have showers every day. We all do this every day. We clean our shoes, we wash our hair, we put a face on, you know, we brush our teeth. It's all about that internal cleaning. So these breaths and these Kriya practices and asana practices are about cleaning the insides. It's getting them toxins out and those toxins moving. And there's no specific set pattern. So what we're saying is we teach you the mantras. We teach you the pranayama. We teach you the hatha poses. We teach you the mudras. We teach you the mantras. Because it's up to you to put them together in what sequence you are comfortable with. I could sit here and give you 10 sequences. And you will write it down word for word. What asana I've done, what pranayama I've done. And literally just make notes on a full sequence. How have I started it? How have I ended it? However, then you're not using your mind to sequence or how you want that class to feel or how you want that class to look. You're working off my feeling, how I want you to feel, what I want to show in that class, what I want that class to feel. But it's good to have examples in the back of your mind. Sequencing is, it's just practice. A lot of sequencing is practice. It's knowing what I do before to what comes after. And in this very traditional form of Kundalini that we teach and, you know, the traditional hatha, it's not like a vinyasa flow where we have to do one pose and then counter the pose and then come back into a pose and counter a pose. With traditional, you can literally go from standing to sitting and you work from one side of the body to the other side of the body. And if that's how it works better for you, then utilize that element of it. Because again, trying to build in a flow is going to be tough.
So all of the postures that we've done so far seem to be very high energy. And that seems difficult to sustain through a whole hour for the teacher and for the students. How can we balance that? Like, what do we do? So in vinyasa, we do pose, counter pose to balance the body. How do we balance the energy to keep it from being at 100% for an hour?
So what you could potentially do in that pose, in that specific situation, is you can counter but do a bit more of a uni type pose. Release. So, you know, when we went into the class and I said release and hold, you've almost gone into that yin version of that asana. So we build, and then you're holding. And then you've gone into that yin element of bringing that energy back down for that movement to flow. So that's where you will get your break. And each chakra works differently. So you don't have to have it so high energy. You could have one asana that you pump with a breath. You have a second asana that you do as a yin. You know, so for a shoulder opening, you can use a bolster, lay across a bolster, like that, open up, and then go into like that child's pose movement that you did, and then come into laying on the bolster in child's pose at the front. Does that make sense? So child's pose, you could go into and then just put your body on a bolster and relax into it. The other thing is, you know, how many props do you want to use within the classroom? Props are brilliant. Props are that student's best friend. But no student ever wants to use a prop because they think that they've got it nailed. You know, their ego kicks in. Just like my ego will kick in when I'm in a class. You know, we all have it. We all do it. You know, even when you guys first came to the class and you're all looking at each other thinking, I don't know this person and I don't know that person. Your ego's kicked in straight away. And I bet, and put your hands up if you did, a few of you, where you've gone into that hatha class or you've gone into that creative class and thought, well, I'm just going to do it, and then you're dead. Like, I can't breathe, I can't move, I've twisted the wrong way, I've twisted too far that way, I shouldn't have twisted that far. But you want it to look good because the teacher's there. Hands up, be honest. We do it. You know, not just you guys do it, I do it. So if we've done it, guess who else is going to be doing it? Those students watching you, thinking, oh wow, look at what my teacher can do, I can do that too. And then you think, God, I can see that contorted face, you know, where you've told them to breathe and they've stopped breathing. That's where you guys come in. Sequencing and trying to pull it all together, this is what you should be thinking about when you're in your practices. When you're learning your mantras. Oh, so I've learned, and if you look at it, each day you have the same schedule. You have a sadhana practice on a morning. Then you have the pranayama and mantra. Then you have your kriya practice. Then you have your pranayama and your mantra. Then you have your alignment stuff. Then you have your anatomy stuff. Then you have your hatha stuff. Then you have your meditation stuff. Think of that almost as your sequence too. If you look at it in that way and look at it how it aligns across, that is literally your sequence done as a starting practice and a starting base. And each day, the relation of the mantra works into the pranayama, works into the kriya practice. The only difference being your alignment slightly off because that's teaching you how to make your students more comfortable and at ease with a specific posture. And your anatomy is all about the medical and health conditions in the body because you don't want people twisting into positions that they shouldn't be. But look at it from that perspective. Look at that flow. And then do you know what you should do in your journaling? Is you should just write a little sequence for yourself every day for that specific chakra. Oh, where does that mantra work? How does that colour come into here? How do I raise that awareness of that specific chakra? What asana would I want to put in or build? Because we are giving you the tools. And it's for you to sort of decipher and understand those tools and how they work and where they work. Because I can't teach you to be a teacher. And I can not really specifically teach you how to sequence, but I can give you guidance on how to sequence. And where does something work? Where does something look good? Where does something fit? Gina, I'll pick on you. Off the top of your head, just throw me 3 asanas and what you would do with the breath work. Take your time, you know, we've got time, we've got no rush.
So if we were working on Swanasana, I would start in Sukhasana, and I would do some training, some breath in and out, and get that going. And then from there, I might move into a bridge, up and down, going in and out, and then holding at the top for a little while. And then from there, I would maybe rock up into boat and see maybe some rocking back and forth and see if we could catch ourselves at the top, and then do some Kapalabhati.
Perfect. See? Magic. You know, we put so much pressure on ourselves that we have to be perfect. How many of us here are thinking, God, if she picks on me, I'm not going to know what to say because I want it to be perfect or perfection. We don't learn through trying to be perfect. Where we'll learn the sequencing, how we'll understand the sequences is through making mistakes. It is through forgetting to do one side. You know, I've been in a class and I've taught a class where I've literally done Virabhadasana on one side, Warrior flipping 2 on one side and totally forgot about the other side. And then you can see the class kind of looking at you thinking, is she not going to move the other way? And then, you know, you've got to laugh. Laugh with yourself. If you can laugh at yourself when you do something daft, trust me, your students will love you. Because we've got to be able to joke in that class. We're not serious. As yogis, who wants a flipping serious yoga? Seriously though, you know, let's make some mistakes because we learn as well then at the same time. And that's where you continue to be the student. I mean, sometimes I walk through Rishikesh and I will see such a moody Sant, sage or Baba. You know, he's got no smile on the face whatsoever. I'll tell you, the other day I was walking down the street and he must have thought I was English or Western. And he said, hello, how are you? So I went, namaste, aap kaise ho? So I said, how are you? He goes, I don't like you. It's literally what he said to me, I don't like you. And I looked and I went, you're dressed like that and you're coming with that vibe to me. The faho, go away. You know, but we don't want that mood. That's like bad energy. You know, if you make a mistake, don't be flustered by it. It's fine. If you miss a trick, you miss a pose, you forget a breath, or even if you stop breathing, which happens because you're trying to do everything all at once, it don't matter, just as long as you don't pass out. Because can you imagine the teacher was breathing and she passed out? Going back to that class. I'm not going back to her class again, she don't know what she's doing. You know, you can really see that happening. Like sometimes I think to myself, am I going red in my face because I can't breathe anymore? It is. Make it simple. It doesn't have to be somebody swinging from the chandeliers. You know, we're not monkeys at the end of the day. You know, even if we go back to the theory of evolution and that's where we started, we don't swing from the chandeliers. We don't need to. And that's not the intention of Kundalini. Kundalini, as Guruji mentioned in sadhana class this morning, you know, when people start shaking and doing all, that's not Kundalini. That's not that energy. Kundalini is about balance. It's about awareness. It's about that, you know, that energy flowing really nicely through your body. If somebody's doing that in a class, I'd be a bit scared and send them to hospital. No CPR. Practice your first aid, everybody. But no, that is literally the sequencing class done. Questions? You've got about 5 minutes. If you want to ask me any more questions, please do so. Yes.
How can you bring dancing in this
Okay.
sequence?
Shall we have a dance now?
But,
This is where you can bring it.
but
End of the
the
class.
End of-
sequence at the end or at the beginning? Or
You bring it, babes, wherever you want to bring it, wherever you feel that energy, wherever you feel that movement. I started the class with you guys moving like this. You know, it could literally be something as simple as them sitting down and having that movement or feeling that music beat. Or you can bring it in the middle.
And how you know the beat you played today? How you know which beat is to which chakra? We learned that?
No, you just feel it. You just feel it.
So you can use the same beat also for other chakras?
Of course you can.
Ah, okay.
That beat that I had, that tribal beat, you could use it for the heart. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. You could use it for the root. Bang, 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 bang. You can use it for your sacral move, water, flowing. It just takes a little bit of thought.
Okay.
That's all it is. It just takes a little bit of thought. Where do we want to move to? Should we shake it out before you get into the inversion class?